I wonder, how would you personally respond if you were told that someone was watching you? Someone saw everything that you did, knew everywhere that you went, knew everything that you thought, and heard everything that you said. What sort of emotional response does that idea create in you? Very quickly, we're going to whack it in the Slido. What emotional response does the idea of being seen create in you? Go. Fantastic. Throw that music down. A lot of very negative emotions, a lot of very difficult things. It feels kind of sinister. It's kind of threatening. It feels sort of controlling. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of awkwardness. There's some shame going on there. It's not a very pleasant idea, is it? I don't know how many of you guys, being a lot younger than me, used to watch Big Brother. You know, that theme tune that I just played? A reality TV show, if you're not familiar. It ran for about 18 years, started way back in 2000 and went on to about 2018, I think. And a group of people would be invited to live in a house where there were cameras everywhere, watching and listening to everything you said and did 24/7. At the beginning, you could even watch it on live stream if you really, really wanted to. And that phrase, Big Brother, comes from a famous book by George Orwell called 1984. Nice cultural reference put there in the Slido. And it's kind of, that book envisaged a future where the state sought to monitor and kind of control your behavior and control your thoughts. Deeply sinister idea of Big Brother watching you. Somebody else put in that Slido, the Facebook thing, which I thought was brilliant, because we use this idea of Big Brother today mainly as a negative expression of some sort of unwanted intrusion into our private lives, maybe by the government. But the biggest people intruding into our lives right at the moment are the big tech five, aren't they? Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Microsoft. They know and they monitor so much of our behavior. My son tells me, and I don't know if this is true or not, if he and I have a conversation near my phone about a new car from Volvo I'd like to buy, the next day I'm going to get an advert from Volvo popping up in my Facebook. I don't know if that's true or not, but big tech is a little bit like Big Brother. You can take that Slido off now. Thanks, Jamie. Now, when Christians talk to us, talk to you about the existence of a God who fully knows you, a God who sees everything that you do, you might think that that sounds a lot like a sinister Big Brother sort of idea. It might make you feel very uncomfortable. It might make you feel all those emotions that you are sharing. And I want to start this evening by saying this one thing. When it comes to this idea of being watched, what we have to consider is, what is the purpose of the one watching? What is the purpose? What's behind it? What's the reason for watching? So, like, for instance, if the person watching, if the one watching is only interested in being entertained, and if God was like that, then God is a bit like Big Brother. I mean, some might have the idea that God created humans for his own entertainment. His own amusement were like playthings, little puppets, and he moves his pawns around and the gods laugh. It's a very sort of Roman view of deity. And if that was true, then it is sick and sinister. I mean, I don't know if you were ever into Big Brother, but you might form some sort of attachment with those people in the house that you're watching, and you might end up rooting for some and being against others. You might hope that some are successful and argue that they're not going to get voted out. But although you feign interest in their lives, at the end of the day, they are solely in that house for our entertainment. And it's voyeuristic, it's manipulative. Is a watching God like that? Or maybe you have a different idea. Maybe you've got this idea of a watching God, the one watching, being a bit like a heavenly policeman with a big stick, waiting to bash you whenever you step out of line. And being fully known is terrifying. And that is what's conjured up by that Orwellian picture of Big Brother, isn't it? That it's about control. And you and I value our freedom so much that that idea is repulsive. Some people have this idea about God, that God might be there, but he's watching and he only wants to spoil my freedom and spoil my fun and control me. And that caricature, that image of God does make him sound sinister and scary. What is it like to be known by God? What does it mean to have a God who is all-seeing and all-knowing? I'm going to say to you tonight, as you won't be surprised to hear, that being fully seen and fully known by God gives me the most incredible comfort, peace, security, and joy. Let me read you a piece of poetry. Bit of poetry that's 3,000 years old. It comes from a collection in the Bible that was written by a historical king of Israel around about 1,000 years BC, a guy called King David. This is what the poem sounds like. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. An amazing piece of poetry. And it sounds like David, this king, genuinely believes that this God that he worships sees and knows everything that he does. And for David, it's a comforting thought. And yet often for you and I, being fully known is a scary thought until we realize the crucial parallel truth that we are also fully loved by this God. To be fully known is scary until you realize that the one watching fully loves. If the one watching over you is like a perfect divine parent, for want of a better illustration, someone who knows you completely, who treasures you, who loves you totally, one who is completely for you, one who's got a meaning and a purpose for your life, then being known, I would argue, is a totally different story. Might start feeling quite scary, but as you grow and you know this God and what this God intends for you, it actually becomes a very comforting, secure experience. You can take that quote off, Jamie, thanks. What would life be like if I was known by God? Now, you might be somebody who thinks, oh, for goodness sake, if that was the case, then my life's bound to get filled up with all sorts of rules, all sorts of do's and don'ts. All the fun stuff that I like to do is going to have to end. It's going to be terrible. I can't imagine anything worse. If you think those things, then you've got this heavenly policeman idea of a divine God. Or you might say, look, for goodness sake, can't you understand? I'm happy with my life the way it is. I don't want anything to change. I'm terrified that my freedom will be curtailed. If the claim of Christianity, as it is that there is a God who knows you, a God who watches over you, a God who sees you, and this God loves you and has a purpose and a meaning for your life within his great purpose for the world, then that is a comfort and a security and leads to great joy. But what do I mean by that? Okay, let me put it this way. It's probably reasonable to say that most would agree that without relationships in life, life loses its meaning. Yeah, life has no joy outside of relationship. And it's the Bible's clear teaching that human beings were made for relationship. Now, in previous talks, we've looked at some things that eyewitnesses to Jesus have recorded. And I've got another quote for you tonight. Another one of Jesus's eyewitnesses, a guy called Matthew, writes down in his biography of Jesus that when Jesus was asked what the most important teaching was, he answered like this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. To love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor. It's fascinating to me that when Jesus was pressed as to the most important element of his teaching, he said relationship. Relationship with God and relationship with each other. Maybe you like to think of it as a vertical relationship and a horizontal relationship. These are the things that make life worth living. Without relationship, what's the point? Now, every one of us craves community. We crave friendship. We crave love. We want to be in relationship. We all love to belong. We all of us, I think, desire good, healthy, stable, fun, trusting relationships. We want to be known and loved. It's a precious thing, perhaps the most precious thing. But I think it's also true to say, probably at one level, all of us secretly fear rejection. We fear being fully known because that might lead to us not being loved. When our friends really discover what we're like, or if this God really knew what I'd done, I will be rejected. And I think so many of us struggle with that. Yes, I like the idea of being known, but it terrifies me because if you really knew what I was like, you would reject me too. And so we hide. We keep things back. We don't commit. We keep a secret, private, shame-filled, dark place within us that nobody's allowed to go to. And that really affects our well-being. It really affects our joy in our lives. And that's why I think it's good for all of us to understand that the foundational relationship of all flourishing relationships, the most important relationship, is the one that you have with the God who knows you fully, who loves you and will accept you completely, no matter what you have done, no matter what has been done to you. I don't want anybody listening to me tonight to doubt that you are fully loved. You are fully loved by the God who fully knows you. And that just brings such joy to your life. The God who knows you calls you to come into relationship with him. The God who knows you has got a better story than the one you're currently living if you're not in relationship with him. This God, his love for you is so incredible. It is so great that he's made a way for everyone, no matter what they've done, to enter into this personal relationship with him. The testimony of my life and the testimony of many lives is this, that to know God and to enjoy God give my life a meaning and a purpose that has no parallel. What's it like to be known by God? It is the most incredible thing in the world. But what about my objections earlier? What about my life getting filled up with rules? What about all my fun ending? And why can't you just leave me alone? I don't want to think about this. Let me say this. If you think, as many people do outside of Christianity, that you must keep a lot of rules in order to be a follower of Jesus, if you think you need to do this stuff so that you can follow him, you've misunderstood the relationship. You've misunderstood the good news. See, God's intention for all of us is that we live flourishing lives, that we live life in its fullness, as Jesus would say. And the moral teaching of Jesus is actually a reflection of what this flourishing life looks like. But hear me clearly. You don't first keep the rules and then come into relationship. That's not how it works. That's like religion. That's not relationship. You first come into relationship with God in Christ, and then the involvement of God in your life begins to change you, begins to transform you, begins to make you increasingly like the person God intended you to be. If you like, to become the real you, the fullness of who you were made to be. Christians don't believe that they're better than anyone else. Actually, the opposite is true. A real Christian knows they are not better than anyone. A real Christian knows just what they're like. But what a Christian is someone who is in a relationship with God, and God is transforming them. God is changing them. God is molding and shaping them to make their life flourish and their relationships flourish. So from my experience, I don't wake up every day trying to keep the rules, or else God will get me. It's the heavenly policeman again. Every day, my desire to live according to God's perfect pattern increases. And I mess up every day. And yet, my relationship is grounded not in my behavior, but on the love that he has shown for me in Jesus. This is at the core of what the good news about Christianity is. Now, of course, being known by God also brings us into a new horizontal relationship with each other. And for me, thinking about the joys of being known by God, one of the massive changes that occurred in my life is that being known by God means that I come to know him in relationship, yes, but as well as that, I've gained a new global family. Those that I call brothers and sisters, other believers in Christ from every culture, from every nation, of every color, of every age. Wherever I go in the world, I can go and meet some of these people, and we're family. We've got strong horizontal relationships based on Jesus. And this is what this word church means. Perhaps the church is the only place in human history where there are genuine multiracial, multi-generational, interclass and intercultural communities. Being known by God is like the entry point into a new community, into a new family. Wherever you go, you've got belonging. You've got community, these flourishing relationships that we all crave. Now, you might have serious problems with the idea of church. You know, you've got preconceived ideas, either because of your own experience or because of the place that church has in our popular culture. You know, it's a relic of a bygone age. Memories you might have of irrelevant and boring school services, or maybe the occasional wedding or funeral you had to go to. You think a church might be a building of beauty or some historically important place, but basically it's a pretty cold, empty, uncomfortable, and they meet at really inconvenient times. I mean, who else holds meetings at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, for goodness sake? And if you have this perspective of church, let me say this to you. You've inherited a misunderstanding if you think the church is the building. If you think the church is that building that stands empty on the corner of your street. The church is not the building. The church is the people. It's the community. The very word in Greek means those people who are called out to be together. And these people, the church, they meet all the time. Whether the building down the street is shut or not, the church is open. When COVID closes all the places of worship, the church is open, because the church is the gathering of believers in Jesus. And what a community it really is. When you find a community of genuine Bible-believing, Jesus-following people, you discover true community with all its challenges and joys. You should, in this community, experience love and acceptance. You should experience deep warmth, sacrificial friendship. You'll discover a group of people who genuinely care for you, not because they're earning points with God, but because that's how he has changed them to be. And this group of people is so diverse. I moved up here to Huddersfield with my family about 2.5 years ago. And at the time we came up, we left the town of Bath in the southwest. And my daughter was 17. And she really struggled to be part of a new gathering of God's people here. She loved where we used to be. And moving here age 17, it was hard. We'd also moved up from Bath. And so she has what people in the north call a posh accent. But you know what happened? She joined a small group of about 10 Christians in our church, multi-ethnic and cross-generational group. And within a few months, she's got close relationships with a 28-year-old married British lady, a 23-year-old single Slovakian lady, and an 81-year-old retired lady. These three women have such incredible influence in my daughter's life because they are her sisters. Even if their age and experience and ethnic background is different, they share this one thing in common: faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, belonging to his people. And that brings them closer than any other shared interest can. This precious community is one of the most incredible things, one of the most incredible results of being known by God. Now listen, let's be realistic. There are certainly gatherings of churches and people where this isn't the case, where judgment and superficiality negate the expected positive benefits of belonging. But there are so many communities out there that you can genuinely find one that really embraces what a church is called to be. Now, I don't know how many of these talks you've listened to over these last 2 weeks, but as we come to the end of Known, I want to urge every one of you not to let the opportunity pass you by. I'm going to challenge you to look for a Christian community to try out. Listen, you might not be ready to accept and believe what Christianity teaches. That's fine. It's not a barrier to belonging. It's not a barrier to being welcomed. When we worked overseas in China, our Chinese friends thought they couldn't come to church until they'd read the whole Bible. Wow, can you imagine? I know loads of Christians who've never read the whole Bible. There's no prerequisites. You don't have to believe before you can belong, before you can be welcomed. In a genuine Christian community, you will be loved and accepted as you are, and encouraged as you continue your journey of discovery of this God who knows you. And COVID has given us such an opportunity to explore different communities from the comfort of beneath our duvet. Because most of these churches at the moment have Zoom gatherings or YouTube services. And you think, oh, I can't be done with more of those. But you know, it does give you a taste of what these places are like. If you've never been in a church, it's quite an intimidating thought, isn't it? To go into this building. But you can join and look and try it out from the comfort of your living room. But you know what? You've also got here right now a friend, a Christian here in Manchester, the person who invited you to the event, the person who encouraged you to come on. The best step is to ask them. Ask them if you can join their community and try it out for a bit. Or maybe even don't worry about the church gathering. Start first with the Christian Union. Talk to somebody in the CU and say, look, I don't believe and I don't yet accept it, but I want to find out more. Can I come along even though you know I'm not yet believing? And they will say, absolutely, come and join, come and see, come and find out, join our impact groups. You know, we run these courses. Christianity Explored is a fantastic way of asking these questions and belonging to community. Belonging often comes before believing. But listen, this God that I've been talking about these last 2 weeks, who fully loves you and fully knows you, is one to be trusted, not one to be feared. It feels sinister, but when the God who loves you is the one who fully knows you and wants you to be in relationship with him and wants your relationships with others to flourish, that is a cause for joy and for safe security, for peace. And I want to urge you, my friends, as we close, take the opportunity to find out more. Take the opportunity to experience one of these communities and learn of this God who knows you, that you might know him. Thank you so much for listening. I know we haven't got too much time for questions now because I talked a bit longer than expected, but I hang out after these meetings. I would love you to come and have a chat with me in my Zoom room after the meeting ends, ask more questions and chat more. Thanks so much for listening. I really pray that God blesses each one of you and draws you into a relationship with him. Thank you.
So yeah, Gerard, first question I have for you is, if God knows me so well, won't he be disappointed by all my wrongs and sins? I am so far from perfect.
Yeah, me too. I'm so far from perfect. You know, I think it's one of the greatest obstacles for us to think about this. We all feel unworthy, not good enough. We've got this very great sense of low self-esteem. But you see, God already knows all of this. There's nothing you can hide from him. Even the thing that you've never admitted to anyone, God knows that. And yet, even though you and me are so filled with these things which are shameful, he did something about it. He sent his son, Jesus, to pay a price, if you like, to make a way for all that stuff to be taken away. You know, to be taken away. And when God looks upon those who have put their trust in him, he delights in the person that you are going to be. He delights in the person that he made. And all the stuff that's gone wrong, all the mess that continues to happen, God has forgiven and forgotten. It's like a completely clean slate in God's eyes. And I think we don't get this enough. I think all of us are kind of ashamed by some of the stuff that goes on inside us or some of the stuff that's happened to us in the past. And have to understand that the God who knows and loves has made a way for that slate to be wiped clean, completely gone. And it's hard to believe that, but that is the purpose of Jesus coming. That's why he came, to pay and get rid of all that sin, it's called, that wrong stuff, that shameful stuff that we've all experienced. So don't let that fear, that shame, that, oh, but if you really knew what I was like, inhibit you from coming close to this divine, wonderful, perfect parent figure, if you like, this God who will accept every one of us because of what Jesus has done.
love it. And I can really relate to this because this is also something that I used to struggle with, or always feel guilty about all the wrongs that I've done. And that guilt would kind of just like consume me because I'll just hold on to it. But really love that, Gerard. Thank you. Another question is, what if I feel like I don't fit in with Christians? They're also nice and polite, and I'm not like them.
Yeah. You know, you might have met the best bunch of Christians. I don't know. If you've met every Christian you've met is nice and polite. Wow, you had a sheltered upbringing. I know a lot of Christians who aren't that polite. But, you know, it's hard, isn't it? We've got this image of these sort of really nice, polite, kind of good, holy, moral people. I'm not like them. Do you know, I'm exactly the same. When I was 20 years old, I wasn't a Christian at all. I was at university the first time. And, you know, I was just like a normal bloke, really, you know, going out every weekend, drinking a lot, very interested in girls. And like this idea that I could be with some of these guys who seemed really nice, but very different from me, it wouldn't have entered my head. But then when I came into relationship with God and discovered these people are my family, I met some of them, maybe some of the less polite ones initially, and we found a bond. We found something in common that brought us closer. So, you know, before you come in to relationship, if you like, you don't feel that you've got much in common. But when you come into relationship with God, you've actually got something that's so much in common with these people who are a bit different from you that there's a bond there. When I go to church when I used to be able to go on a Sunday, you know, you'd sit in a row of people, you'd look along the row and you think, you would never put these people together in a normal world. You know, there's guys who come out of prison, there's guys off the street, there's a businessman, there's a doctor, there's, you know, a Nigerian lady, there's a former Muslim Iranian guy. We're all sitting in this row as a community. I think that's an incredible thing, the diversity within the community of God, because the thing that holds us together, even if we've got different interests and different personalities, different backgrounds, we have one common thing, the most important thing, and that's this relationship with God and Jesus. And so I would say to you, if you look at these Christians thinking, I'd never fit in there, come to God and you'll discover a community of people who maybe aren't like you, but the thing you've got in common will knit you close together with them in a way that will completely blow your mind.
Oh, really love it. I think another thing just to encourage you guys all is that understand that not everybody starts at the top. Everybody starts at the bottom and then works their way to the top. It's all oppressors. At first we might feel like, I might not fit in, but it's understand that you're only human and you will make mistakes, but you know, come to God and those mistakes will, you know, be turned into a masterpiece. And yeah, unfortunately, because of time, we will only have time for maybe one more question. But again, as I mentioned, of course, if you didn't get to have your question answered, definitely hold that thought and stay behind. And yeah, Gerard would love to have a talk with you. But the last question I really wanted to, as I even highlighted it as well on the slider, is if God's love is more important than keeping the rules, then why are there so many rules in the Bible? And in brackets, some of them seem very oppressive.
I was really hoping you would ask that question. And if you're the one who asked that question or liked that question and you're not satisfied with what's going to be a very short answer, please stay on. This is a rich and deep subject, okay? Let's first remember what I said. It's not about keeping rules to earn God's love. It's about entering into relationship with God. And what you see in what look to us like these rules, a kind of community, a flourishing society looks like. And it's God who moves you to keep them. But let me answer what's going on beneath that. We hate the idea of there being right and wrong in our society. We hate the idea of there being rules. But let me suggest to you that in order for a society to function at a healthy level, we all need boundaries, okay? So I was thinking about this actually last night. Boundaries. Like, I imagine that what I would really love to do as an illustration, I'd love to be on a holiday all my life. I mean, you know, when you go on your holidays, you might get a chance. Do you remember the day when we used to be able to go on holidays? Yeah. You might go off to Greece or something. You might sit in Greece on the beach for 2 weeks. And when you're sitting there, you think, I wish I could do this for the rest of my life. I wish I could always be on holiday and not have to go to work. But we've been given a boundary. Maybe you get 2 weeks holiday. Maybe you get 3 weeks holiday when you're working. The boundary actually helps us enjoy the holiday more. Because if you were on holiday your whole life, believe me, you'll be bored. Maybe not in 3 weeks or 6, but eventually your enjoyment of the holiday is not the same without the boundary. And that's a very simple illustration. And that's the way to look at some of these, what look like oppressive rules, that if God has got a way for our society to function that's flourishing for all of us and his creation, then there are guidelines, there are boundaries, there are rules that will help us to live within those things. And some of them look to us like they're oppressive, especially I recognize in the area of sexual behavior. And so if you want to talk about that with me, I will be over the moon to talk about that with you in a Zoom room. But think about this picture of there being boundaries that, you know, and that works not just in holiday, it works in loads of other ways as well. And people who wish they were complete billionaires and have so much money and never worry about it. But having the boundary of a certain salary, if you like, a certain, money to spend, helps us enjoy those things more that we've been able to buy than the billionaire who doesn't have to think about it. I don't know very many happy, contented, I don't know many billionaires at all, but I don't think there are many that you read about who are really happy because of all their money. It just adds a weight of stress. We need constraints, boundaries. We need some of these rules. That's my short 3-minute answer.
Mm-hmm.